Welcome back, Sparklers, to another episode of Ignite Your Spark. I'm your host, Kim Duff Selby. Now, if you have been listening, you know that my goal on earth right now is to bring light to other people, to help you step into your most authentic, joy-filled self. Because I know it's in there, even if you don't know it's in there. And yes, it's a little selfish because I like to be around high vibe, happy, joy filled people. So I thought, why not bring you people on my podcast who are going to ignite something within you, help you perhaps step out of your comfort zone, learn something new, heal the parts of you that need healing. And today I have a fabulous guest whose mission on earth at this time is to heal us through divine light and help us learn to heal ourselves. We share this mission, and I have read many things recently that there are many of us who incarnated at this time in order to bring light to the world. And you all know right now that we need more light. I want you to really welcome Jim McCarthy. So pretend we're on stage and everybody's applauding. Yay, yay, Jim, I see the light. I am thrilled that you said yes to being here, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Jim I met him, I didn't meet him, well, I did, but I met him, I heard him on another podcast. And then I've had a few sessions with him because it just really spoke to me. And I use my intuition when I am looking for someone to assist me in whatever it is that I need assisting with at the time. And it's usually some sort of healing or growth. And Jim has a great story. He is a healer. I think he's a healer from the light, of the light, for the light, to bring out the light in all of us. And this wasn't always his mission. I'll let you tell your story, but just you kind of learned hypnotism or hypnotherapy. You learned that in your 20s. You built $1 million company. It was a bulletproof security company. You got ill. You went through alternative methods of healing and studied, and here you are today. And I will let you tell a little bit of your Genesis story, but I'm more interested in how you do what you do and your mission. But okay, I'm going to shut up in a second. However, I'm going to ask you a question. How do you ignite your spark, Jim?
I just connect with it. I mean, every morning, the first thing I do is I just go quiet. You know, when you quiet your mind and you get in the present moment, you're already igniting your spark. Because the spark comes when your mind is quiet. And I just call it in. I just say, you know, I invoke the divine presence. I call in the Holy Spirit. I call in my divine guides and angels. And it's really like dialing a phone number, right? And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Like when I first started doing it, I could feel a little bit of tingling. And as soon as I felt that tingling, I would put my awareness on it because I knew something outside of the me that I identified with was present. And as I started doing it more and more, you know, one of my teachers at one time told me that it's accumulative. So the more you connect to light, the more it starts to activate itself in you, and the more intimate of a relationship you start to have with it. And as you do this more and more and more, it also starts to purge out of you naturally what isn't of your essence and what isn't of light and what isn't of truth. Right? So I just made it a point to, you know, I realized that when I did this in the morning, and then I would just send light before me to meet the challenges I was facing that day, then all of a sudden, you know, I started having right thought, right action without taking thought. Right? I started to know what to say, what to do without actually having to think. Right? And, you know, at a certain time, I studied mysticism. And this guy was a profound healer. His name was Joe Goldsmith. And he was back in the 60s, but I studied him for like 5 hours a day for years. And he always said, you know, take no thought. Like Jesus said, take no thought. And I was like contemplating, what's that mean? How can we not think? Right? And then one day when I was receiving guidance and it was spot on, I realized I wasn't thinking, I was just receiving it, right? And I realized all of this has to do with learning how to connect with the light within you, right?
Yeah.
And the more you do that, and the more you start to learn how to trust in it, the more you start to naturally heal and naturally help other people, because that's what the divine does. That's what the light within you does. But we have to realize that's our essence. And when we
Yes.
realize that's our essence and that's our partner in life, and that's the only relationship you'll ever have in this world that will never judge you, that will never hurt you, that will always protect you, and that's all knowing. And it's right inside yourself, right?
Yeah.
So what I teach people is how to connect with that. And then how to let go of the things that it brings up in them so that they can heal it. But once that connection's made, like when I work with people one-on-one, I might hold that connection for them. And then that connection will show me like emotional wounds or traumas or whatever that are still active in their consciousness that isn't their essence, but needs to be released. And I'll help them release it. And when they release it, underneath it is naturally peace, right? Because once you return to that essence of light, there's going to be peace, and there's going to be what they call omniscience, all knowingness, and it'll never do any harm. So when you're in a state of divine connection or connection to light, you'll never harm yourself or anyone else. And every action you take will be a healing action or a positive action. It's when you're in fear or when you're an emotional wound and you're reactive to that, that's when you start to cause yourself harm and others harm, right?
Yeah. So, Jim, I have a couple of questions.
But you don't
If
have audio.
no,
Oh, now you do. You're good.
weird. Okay. If someone says, well, I'm not religious, how do you come back to an answer with that? Because I know that there is light within everyone, but someone may say, well, wait a minute, I don't believe in religion. Do you have skeptics who come to you, or everyone needs to be pretty open, don't they, to receiving this type of a healing, this type of information?
They do have to be open. I mean, you know, it's like light respects free will, and if you're not open, then it leaves you alone. And that's usually the hardest obstacle there is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To get someone to be open and to recognize, like to start to trust that this consciousness only wants to heal them and make them feel better and make them, you know, more in alignment with their highest purpose, which will be meaningful to their life. Right? So, you know, you could call that God, you can call it the Holy Spirit, whatever name you have of it is a label, right? The truth is, it's your life force. It's the thing that beats your heart. It's the thing that's always replacing damaged cells with new cells, and it breathes you. Okay, we don't breathe ourselves. It breathes life's force into us, and it does it all by grace. Right? It does it whether we believe in it or not.
Yeah, I love it. I love the whole light healing. I mean, it really resonates and speaks to me. And
Uh-huh.
when you first realized you had this gift, what were you doing and how did it manifest itself into your being, I guess?
Well, it started off as just guidance and intuition. And I had this teacher in like 2010, and she was a really high soul. I mean, she brought people back from the dead at times, you know.
Uh-huh.
And she actually got fired for being a nurse for bringing someone back from the dead. And when I talked to her about it, I'm like, how'd you do that? She goes, I didn't really do anything. I just kind of, you know, held space,
Mm.
right? And realized that that soul didn't want to leave. And but she could see everything, and I could feel everything, right? And she could see my past lives, and she could see, you know, where I'd been and what I had done. And she told me, you need to start teaching. And I said, well, I don't know what to teach. And she said, you will, just start talking, right? And at that time I was running a multi-million-dollar company, and I had studied mysticism and been around the world to like healers that didn't really call themselves healers that were extremely effective at healing like cancer overnight, okay, and things like that. And one thing I was taught while I was doing that was one of the most profound things you can do for humanity is just to bring light to the world.
Mm.
And so 2 nights a week at my office, I would hold something called Sacred Room. And in Sacred Room, that at this time I'd been connecting to light for a long time, I would just call in the divine, I would call in my gods and angels, I would call in these beings that helped heal. And I would just play blessed music and hold that energy as a frequency for my office. And all the people that sat in my office would just receive it. Okay, and people would just come. And they were clearing like emotional stuff, like it would just kind of gently push it out of them and dissolve it, and they felt better. And there's this one lady that came, and she had liver issues, and I didn't know it. Somebody brought her, and so I did what I was doing, and I just called in the Holy Spirit and this energy, and I held it, and I played music, and that was it. And sometimes I would do prayers. Because prayers to me are nothing but your relationship with that light within yourself. And it's a form of communication to it. Okay, so the light's your partner, but it also respects your free will. And the more you ask of it, the more it gives you. Right? So if you ask, please help me solve this problem, and then all of a sudden you were intuitively guided on how to solve the problem, or you just said the right thing, or it dissolved, you start to trust in it and you start to go to it more often.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's really the key. But so back to this thing. So I did this Sacred Room and held energy for the group. And the next week the lady didn't come back, and the next week the lady didn't come back, and the next week the lady came back, and I was like, oh hi, because I just thought she didn't like it or didn't get anything out of it. And she says, well, I came back to share something with you. And I said, what? She goes, how did you know my liver was bad? And I said, I didn't. And she says, well, I came here and I felt all this energy working on my liver. And the next week, I had all of this anger and frustration just purging out of me.
Mm.
And and she goes, my liver enzymes had been elevated. And she said, then the next week, I went to the doctors and my liver enzymes were perfect. And I felt fine. Right? She goes, how did you know that? And I said, I didn't know it at all. The energy knows it. Right? It knows exactly where to go, and it knows exactly what you need for a mental healing, a physical healing, a spiritual healing. And the less I know about it, actually, the more effective it is.
Yeah. I love that about you and the teachings that I've learned from you is that you don't need to specify a certain thing, heal this wart or, whatever it is, heal this, heal that. You just let the light in and it
Yes.
knows and takes care. When you first discovered your gift or your talents, were you in any way skeptical before that? Growing up, what was your religious background growing up? Obviously Catholic, I'm going to say, with a name like Jim McCarthy.
No, I wasn't.
No.
I was born into the religion of religious science,
Uh-huh.
science of mind. And I went there for a while, and I was too young to really get anything out of it. And then as a teenager, I got depressed, and I went back to that church, and I started going to the church thinking it was going to help me. And all they were talking about was how pleasant death was, right? Because the people that went to the church were all old,
Yeah.
right? So we're trying to like ease them into it's okay to leave, right?
Right.
And so I wasn't it wasn't helping being depressed. And so I was like, all right, all right. So then I started searching around, and that's when I really wanted to start learning how the mind body worked.
Ah, there you go.
Right.
You were
And
young. You were young. You were
I was
too.
young.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was about 18 years old, my guides told me, and I didn't know they were my guides at the time, but they told me it's done unto you as you believe, period. And I was like, what does that mean? And they said, you'll know in the future.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. But it really intrigued me to learn that, right? And then when I studied, when I studied with the hypnosis guy I studied with, his name was Dave Jobson, and he was probably the best living hypnotist in the world at that time. And he was healing cancer like 90% of the time, right? Like this one lady had brain cancer and she says, I need to go see you. And she goes, I got like 3 weeks to live or something. He goes, well, I've got a workshop in 6 weeks. You can come to that. She goes, well, I'll be dead. And he goes, well, then I guess you won't come. Right. Well, she lived and she came, and 2 weeks later, she had no cancer. Right. Because it really is a mind body thing.
Well, exactly, Jim. So that is a little question I have at this time. Is all illness and all ailments, is it all related to something within our mind? I mean, past traumas or emotions, whether it's past lives or from this life, or beliefs, paradigms, in your estimation?
Well, a lot of it is just things that we need to clear in our energy field. Okay. So for example, well, let me tell you a story. Okay. I was working with a guy the other day, and he was concerned about his mother because his father got into a brawl with his daughter-in-law. Like not this guy's wife, but his brother's wife.
Okay.
And they were on vacation, and they kind of had a little episode, and it kind of expanded into something big. And so the lady was the the sister-in-law got really upset and said, well, you're not going to see my kids anymore. And this was his mom's biggest fear, was not to be able to see her grandkids. And he goes, which is odd because when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to see my grandparents because she prevented it.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes the emotional clearing and the clearing is just that your soul had did something in the past and it felt a certain way, like having the power to prevent the grandchildren from hurting someone else by preventing them from seeing their grandchildren. And then later on, the soul experiences it, so they understand that it's painful, and then they don't do it anymore. Right. So a lot of it's just learning. Okay. But a lot of it is emotional stuff that wasn't fully processed. Like imagine that when you were a little kid, right? Something scared you and you ran to your mom and you said, Mom, 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 I'm really scared. And you're broadcasting that fear too. And you don't realize that. Nobody does. But if everybody kind of is telepathic and they're feeling the energy and they don't want to feel it either. So they're just like, it's okay, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then they say, let's go get an ice cream. Let's go watch TV. Let's go do this. Anything so they don't have to feel the fear. Okay. But that fear then gets trapped in your energy field. There's a trauma that's unexpressed.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that's not fully expressed has a vibration, and it keeps attracting things like itself because it needs to be healed. It's not who you are. It's not your essence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What would you counsel someone, say they were, instead of saying, let's go get an ice cream, would it have been better for a parent to say, let's talk about it? Is there a way to clear something like that before it gets lodged in our psyche?
If you're present with the person, right? I mean, one of the greatest things is just to learn how to listen to people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you're just present with the person and you can hold yourself in the present moment, right? You're automatically connected to the light because you're staying out of judgment. You're staying out of the need to control it. And if you can do that, sometimes miraculously, it just dissolves into nothing. And I've watched it numerous times. This person I work with, I've been teaching him how to bring light to situations, right? And he was at a 7-Eleven, and these two women were just fighting it out. Okay. And normally he would get in there and try to like make peace and separate them or whatever. And he just watched them. And he goes, as I watched them, I started to feel this presence. And
Hmm.
this is what I teach, is how to connect so strongly to this presence that you can start being an instrument of it, right? And so he said, I felt this peace come over me. And within a few minutes, they just quit fighting altogether and they were at peace,
Wow.
right? And so the thing is that if you can learn to connect to light or divinity or the essence of your being, when there's trauma going on in your environment, it's
Mhm.
automatically going to transmute it because it has dominion. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a law in this world called the law of resonance, and basically the higher frequency always dominates. Okay, so
Okay.
truth will
Yeah.
always dominate. So if you can learn to bring your wounds to the light, right, your emotional wounds or even perceptions, thoughts that are causing you a lot of suffering, if you can start to be present with those and just bring in light and just say, okay, please help me to heal and transmute this, it will. And it'll do it so gently that automatically you'll just start thinking differently and you'll see things the way they truly are, and it won't cause you any suffering. Right. But it's that's kind of what I teach is how to bring this consciousness that's all knowing and all loving to your problems and then let it solve the problem and teach you and heal you at the same time.
Well, this would be a very good tool if, well, it is a good tool now, but I meant it would have been a good tool for me to know about when I had young kids,
Yeah,
because
yeah, it's a
I
good tool.
mean, really,
Yeah.
they get afraid or something happens, and by saying it's okay, I don't think we're really doing a service,
Well,
to them.
yeah, but the thing is the reason why we resist it is because we're uncomfortable feeling it.
Right, right.
And that's like when I work with people, I feel sometimes I will feel what they need to heal, and then I'll heal it in my own body. I'll transmute it into light in my own body. But that took a lot of training for me to get very comfortable with uncomfortable emotions without judging them at all.
Oh, right, because you're absorbing those uncomfortable
Well, I'm
emotions.
not absorbing them, but I'm feeling them. And it's a really accurate way to, like, a lot of people, they'll give you, quote, a reading, and they'll see that you have a bad relationship with your husband or your wife, or they'll see you have problems at work or whatever like that. I'll do that too, but I'll also feel the emotion of it. And as I start to heal the emotion of it, I'll see the past experiences that still need to be cleared from it, and then I'll start to clear those. And then sometimes I'll hear the thoughts associated with it, and I'll just ask the person, is it okay to let go of these thoughts now?
Hmm.
Right. And
Hmm.
once it's all brought into awareness and released into, quote, light, it gets transformed and you're at peace again. Right. It doesn't bother you at all.
Yeah. And you had said in the other podcast I listened to of yours that you can actually sometimes heal generations by healing someone, removing
Yes.
that. And that to me is fascinating because the other person doesn't even have to know, or the generations below you don't even have to be aware that this healing is taking place.
Yes. Well, we're all healing generations. Like there's an avatar I work with in Europe, and she says, when I work with you, I'm healing 7 generations behind you. Because, like, let's go a step further. So let's say like you're born into an environment and there's already false belief systems in that environment and the energy associated with them. If your parents were very angry and couldn't deal with frustration, that passes along.
Hmm.
Okay. And it keeps going forward until someone clears it. Because the only way to clear something is to be present with it and to, stop being reactive to it. Just to be present with it and acknowledge it is a really big first step in healing something.
Mm.
Like when you start to really focus on what's going on in you, and let's say you're feeling afraid, if you just say, I feel scared, okay, automatically you've quit identifying with being afraid, and you're witnessing that you're feeling fear.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And
So
when
awareness.
you step back to that perspective, healing naturally starts to happen because you're no longer, it's like when you engage in something, when you say, I am this, you reinforce it.
Right, right.
When you start saying, I feel this, it's like, okay, but it's not me. Right.
It's just
So,
an emotion. It's just an
yeah,
emotion or, you
yeah.
know, yeah, I love your prayers, and we'll let people know that you can send them prayers too. I said to you before we started, and I said, I'm a little impatient. And, I probably shouldn't enforce that. And my daughter is impatient also. And my family loves to say she gets it from you. And is there modeling along with, past generational kind of impatience, say? Is does it refer to something such as impatience as well as anger or anxiety?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in my family there was a lot of frustration. On one side of my family there was a lot of frustration, and I had a lot of frustration. And one day when I was feeling really frustrated, I just became extremely present with it. And then I was on hold with customer service at the time after like 4 hours,
That'll
and
test you.
and as I started doing my prayers,
Ah,
and I started clearing it. Because one thing is when you offer something to light or to the divine, it'll take it from you. Okay. But you got to be willing to let go of it. Okay.
right. This is so interesting, Jim, because when we had our session, you would say to me, are you willing to let go of the fear or whatever it is? And you had said, because I asked you this, some people aren't willing because, yeah, take it all away from me. But you said,
Right.
because it's a comfort, right? Some people don't know how to live without that fear in their body.
Well, what happens is, and it's with fear and anger. Okay. So part of what my gift is when I look into the person and I can see what's going on in the mind. And if they're holding on to fear, a lot of times they'll tell me why they're holding on to it. Their
Mhm.
soul. Okay. It's
Mhm.
like, is it okay to let go of this fear? And maybe like if it's a woman that I'm working with, a little girl will say no. And I'll say, why not? And she'll say, because it protects me.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay. And so they've held fear their whole life because they think that the fear actually protects them, which makes sense because it's like, okay, if I'm afraid of this person, I won't get hurt.
Right.
Okay.
It's the fight or flight thing.
And right.
Yeah.
And the reality is they never want to be hurt again the way they were hurt when they developed the fear. Okay. But the other thing is that they don't realize that that fear also attracts the event
Hmm.
that that resonates with the fear.
Hmm.
Okay. So what I'll tell them is it okay to learn how to trust the light to protect you?
Mm.
And so you can let go of the fear. Because light in itself has such a high frequency, it automatically transmutes anything that would harm you out. Right?
Can we do that ourselves? Can we just call in? I kind of know the answer, but I want to talk about it. Can we
Okay.
call in the light ourselves? That's what you've taught me.
Sure.
I'm
The
assuming.
light's within you. The
Yeah,
light's within
it
you.
is us, right?
Right. And so what you do is you just ask it to come forward and ask it to make its presence known.
Hmm.
Okay. Like some of the ways you start when you're working with light, right, is go for a walk in nature and feel the peace of nature.
Hmm.
That's the light. Okay. That's the
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're experiencing it and feeling it, isn't it within you?
Right. Right. Of course.
Exactly. So once you start to feel it and experience it, like when I work with people and I'll like do a meditation where we'll call in the light together because I can hold it stronger than they can if they're new.
Right.
Okay. And so we'll call in the light together and I'll say, how do you feel? I'm going to say peaceful. Do you feel any energy? Yes, I do. Okay. Turn to that energy and say thank you
Mhm.
because you're acknowledging the presence of the light.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that starts your relationship with it,
Yeah.
right? And then they'll look like this one lady I work with, she goes, whenever we do this, I feel tingling in my neck. I said, for you, that's a sign you're connected to light. So when you feel that connection, then you know that it's already present and it's already starting to heal you. Right? It doesn't need you to tell you what's wrong with it. All you
However,
need is to
it's
connect to it.
important to be grateful for it.
It's important to be grateful for it and
As
to
a
acknowledge it and to thank
thank
and
it.
to thank it. Right? That's what the Ho'oponopono prayers are all about, is keeping that connective active and thanking it.
Jim, if we're running out of time, I could talk to you for so long about this. Do you find that most people have fear and anxiety as two of the big things running throughout their bodies?
I
Is that
think on Earth everybody has fear.
yeah.
Okay? And so I think that the more you can get comfortable with it,
Mm,
like I had a lot of fear. And that's one of the things I'm really good at working with, because I had a lot of it. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And I cleared it and I cleared it and I cleared it. I saw, a lot of memories where it originated from. I saw ancestral stuff where it came from. As you clear it, sometimes you're shown all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to do anything, you're just shown. And so at one point I realized I had very, very little fear.
Mm.
Okay. But then I was at a meeting or something and someone in the meeting was afraid and I felt fear. And I felt as if it was my fear.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay. And I realized at that moment that you really can't, in this world, there is fear. So you might not personally identify with it as yours. But if it's in, like, let's go back to that child. If your child comes up and she or he is full of fear, they're going to be broadcasting that fear. So it's nice to learn to be comfortable feeling it
Ah,
and be able to be present feeling it without identifying with it as you or as them. It's a state of consciousness and its energy,
yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
And
Yes.
and a lot of empaths make that mistake because we feel everything.
Right.
Okay, so they avoid everything and they lock themselves in a room. Well, what if there's gifts with being an empath to where you can feel everything, but you can also transmute it into light? And you can also use it as a form of knowledge,
Yeah.
right? So like if you're in a business meeting and you can feel someone really, intensely, and they're full of anger, and they're full of fear, and they're nervous, and you can feel the shady feeling, you probably don't want to do business with them. It
Right.
becomes a gift, even
Yeah.
a curse, right?
Is there a way, do you protect yourself when you go out into the world each day so that you're not taking on other people's emotions as an empath and a healer yourself?
I I cultivate my connection with light. And as long as you're connected with light, nothing can harm you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I
Okay?
love it.
It's like this. One of my teachers taught me one time, if you're radiating out light, you're not taking in darkness.
Mhm. Because darkness can't grow where there is light. Mold
Right,
can't grow where there's light.
right.
I feel like all of these things, these lessons are coming to me, very in rapid succession now,
Uh-huh.
thanks to people such as yourself. Before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about the last meditation, prayer that you sent to me, clearing negative energy, because I think it's really important. And I just want to talk about it in terms of how you know when you go into a room. And I always say that's why I want people to be happy, because those psychic vampires, you walk into a room and you're like, oh, you just feel that heavy energy from a person. I'm speaking about a person, but I know that it's also in rooms. And I love this, what you wrote from your meditation about clearing the energy in the rooms by bringing light in. It's a little more detailed than that, but just talk a little bit about how that there is stuck energy in rooms and people may not be aware of why they feel when they walk into a space.
Well, okay, so we're powerful beings, okay? And whatever we believe in, we're broadcasting that frequency. Okay, so if we're angry for some reason based on our state of consciousness, when we are talking about it, we're also radiating anger. Okay, and that anger can fill a room,
Yeah.
and over time, it can, like if you go, I can walk into a business. I work with businesses, And I can walk into a business and immediately know the state of consciousness of that business. If there's a lot of dark energy, if there's a lot of negativity, I should say, I can feel it. And then I know it needs to be cleared. Okay. So if I clear that business, but there's still people in there that are choosing to do things that keep creating dark energy, it doesn't heal the business, it just temporarily clears it. Okay? So what I try to teach people in business is how to recognize that energy and how to get it out of their business.
Yeah, I mean, that's so valuable for businesses. I mean, that's huge. It's going to raise profits. It's going to increase positivity in the workforce.
Right.
And it's also, I think that I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that when you walk in and you use the example of an Airbnb and how you just felt that negative energy, but you can feel it in your own home. You can feel it in different, if someone's been in there and they have like icky energy, you can feel it. And I don't know, like I said, I do need to wrap up, but I could talk about this forever because I'm interested in, people use sage to cleanse the energy of the room, and people practice feng shui to get the good energy. It's probably not a bad idea to do all of it, but you can just do it by the light.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's the most effective way to do it is by bringing a pure energy in and just asking the energy to purify and bless the room. Okay. And because there's nothing, when you walk into like a hotel room or an Airbnb or whatever, what you're feeling is the energy that came before you, but
Right.
there's nothing holding it there anymore. Right? The soul that brought it in is not there, so there's no attachment to it. So you're just clearing things that came from the past.
Right.
Okay. And so when you go in there, if you learn how to call in light and you get good at it, you can just call in the divine light and just once you feel the presence of it, just ask it to please clear this room of anything that's not light and to bless this room and make it, a blessing for those that walk into it in the future. Right. And depending on how much energy is in that room will be dependent on how long you have to hold light for and things like that. You might have to do it a few days. And I have music that, that I can play that does it for me, where I can just leave the room and play the music and then it'll clear it. Okay. But think about that room as your body.
Yeah.
And think about the energy in that room as maybe ancestral healing that needs to happen. The stuff that came before you, because you were born into the body and that body might have already felt yucky inside. Right?
Right.
So how do you clear it?
Right.
No different than clearing the room.
Oh,
And you're welcome to share what I wrote with anybody that wants to.
yeah, I love it so much. I will put a link to that. That would be great. Jim, where can people find you? Because I know people are running and you give a lot of things away. And I know you do, of course, one-on-one, since I've done that. And I'm going to get ready to schedule another one. And you do retreats, but what's your website? Say, I'll put it in the show notes, but just so everybody knows.
It's www.infinitelight.me.
Okay.
And if people want some of the prayers that I've written on clearing, both ancestral clearing and clearing emotional stuff and stuff like that, they can go to the consultant. I think it's a consultation page. And at the bottom of it, they can download the prayers for free.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for that. Jim, thank you. I'm so appreciative that you shared this information today because I feel like I want to be a light. Well, I am mostly positive and upbeat. And I know when someone positive and upbeat enters a room, I get that. And I really want us all to shine our light, to feel that light within. And what you do is actually help us heal with this light. It's just remarkable. And I am very grateful.
As the light heals you, it also makes you a stronger light.
Yeah.
Because once it removes darkness or negativity or belief systems, because it'll correct belief systems. Once it corrects your belief systems and you see things as truth, there'll be no suffering involved. Okay? And you'll automatically just know what to say and you'll know the right thoughts. Right. And when that happens, the emotional stuff goes bye-bye instantly. Like all healing is really a shift of consciousness.
Am I lighter than when we first met?
I don't know. I haven't looked in. I have to look at you energetically, but you tell me, are you?
Yeah. Well,
Do you feel better?
I have some ups and downs.
Yeah, well,
Sleep is
that's right. And
sleep
that's
still an issue. So
okay. Well, what, we're going to have ups and downs, and part of the teaching is to teach us how to have ups and downs and still be in peace and still bring love to that and
yes,
joy to that, right? Still be able to function and do well and learn how to clear those downs, right? How to let that stuff go instead of fighting it or trying to change the world so that you don't have to feel it. It goes back to like that little kid. If they're afraid and they come up to you and say, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, I'm afraid," and you're feeling this wave of fear, and you're afraid of the fear, right? You're gonna be like, "Hey, stop," right?
right,
And that doesn't help,
right,
right?
right.
If you can learn how to just be present with it, it will clear it, and that kid won't have, 1,000 reoccurrences based on that fear needing to come out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's great. No, I do feel it. I actually do feel that I'm able to transmute the
Yeah,
feelings and emotions much more quickly, let's just
right.
say, and
And
easily.
and and eventually you'll feel a sense of joy even when the emotions are coming up,
Yes.
right? You'll feel love and you'll feel joy, and that's when they no longer have a real effect on you.
I certainly feel joy now. I'm so
Good.
grateful. I really do. My spark is way ignited, even though it's a million degrees in my office. I I'm just thrilled. I thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your talents and your words and your wisdom with my audience today and me, because I really need to hear it too.
Well, thank you very much. And it weren't my words. I connected live before the interview, so.
Right. Oh, I know that, but you are the
Yeah,
vehicle. And so I appreciate your guides for putting those words into you and for mine for putting them into me. So,
thank you very much.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I know that you are filled with light after listening to this. I hope you will reach out to Jim if you need a little more assistance. He has really helped me. And I love it when I can actually endorse someone that I've worked with instead of just saying this person says they're this, and this. This person right here says it and it's true. The light comes out and into you. Oh, I rhymed. That's our little rhyme for the day. So ignite your spark, folks, and call on the divine, the light, to clear and cleanse. Head to Jim's website and you'll learn a lot more because the world needs your light. And thank you in advance for shining it.
Thank you.
See you next time.